I listened to some of his speeches more recently, and I tried to recount them to my wife because they're so good. I mean, of course, the one that's the one more famous ones is that very very funny story he tells about mice and cats, right? So I'm going to link it to the in the show notes so people can listen to it. But it's very kind of interesting that it take him time to kind of hone his abilities to be able to win that seat and of course become premier of Saskatchewan, or was it just the right time for him, or was it he always had the capability, it was just wasn't the right time, or did he actually have to improve himself in a way that made people want to vote for him?
He certainly had to improve his ability to speak to the public. At first, he himself admitted he would talk about policy, but he would talk about policy like he was some professor. He was a well-educated man. Got his master's degree. He was working on a doctorate at the University of Chicago in sociology. Uh, and he talked about policy in very complicated terms in 1934, and he just could not, in a sense, get much traction with the general public. And he realized two things. One, it was important to use humor to get people to, in a sense, listen to you in the first place, to get their attention. And second of all, he had to put public policy in the very terms that people would understand it. So he had to speak a language that everyone could understand. And it took time to hone that ability. He wasn't dumbing down his speeches, but he was speaking in terms, very concrete terms that people would understand. And I note that, you use the idea of real world evidence here. Well, he needed to use their real world evidence to begin to describe these things in ways that would make sense to them. And he became very practiced in that ability over time, but he did not have it naturally. So it took some time. Now, the other thing about it wasn't just, and in fact, there was very little to do with the context of the time because the CCF did very poorly in the 1935 election, actually. There were only two members that were elected in Saskatchewan. It was a tiny caucus in Ottawa. It was a minuscule third party. So it wasn't like there was any momentum at the time in favor of the CCF. In some ways, I'm sure he felt like the party and what they had to say in Parliament was like a cry in the wilderness at times, and that they had to do all kinds of things to become noticed. And that made him very good at dealing with the media. Uh, it made him very good at radio speeches, so he could, in fact, go over the heads of the media to talk to the Canadian public directly. These are all skills that he practiced with time. He had some advantages. He had been trained as an actor when he was younger, growing up in Winnipeg. And so he used some of his skills as an actor, a dramatist, if you like, to add to his speeches when necessary. He knew the tricks of the trade, but still, to translate that into an effective political orator took some effort.
That's great to know because sometimes or at least for myself, maybe in some ways it's not accurate. I always sometimes you feel, oh, that person's blessed with it, right? "Quote unquote blessed," it's genetically, it's whatever it may be. But it's nice to hear that someone really worked hard on something. It took them a long time, and then finally he was able to succeed. So